Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We are a group of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. Contrary to popular belief, I am back, and I am your host, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I am joined today by three special people today. First of all, we have the Collector.
Hey, this is David.
And the intellectual, sometimes introvert.
Hi, everybody. This is Chris.
And today joining us once again, the Deluxeifier.
This is Pete. I'm back again.
He's back. All right, guys. In today's episode, we are trying to stay on track as we place our bets on a pair of racing games. We'll start in a traditional setting, handling hairpin turns and leaving a trail of tread as we control the course in Downforce. Say that 10 times fast. Then we'll fill our canteens and dare to dazzle the desert dunes for a boisterously bumpy ride in Camel Up. And finally, because we just can't help ourselves, we'll determine which game crosses the finish line first as we face them off against each other in our ultimate showdown, the Battle of the Funnest. But while our mechanics make those final engine tweaks, David, what's our topic of discussion for today?
Today's topic of discussion is, what advice would you give somebody that is trying to find a game group near them? I know a lot of us, we got together different ways, but I know this comes up a lot. I see this a lot on like Facebook and stuff like that. There's just people that are just trying to find people to play games with. Like, what would your recommendations be for someone who is looking to find a game group by them?
Well, when I started, I actually went to one of the game stores and I got to be real good friends with the owner and just really asked around. They actually had events going on. It was every couple weeks or once a week. So I would start coming to them and just meeting people. And, the first couple of times I would walk around and just kind of see what was actively playing, introduce myself, and sometimes jump into the game. So that's kind of how I got started with it. And then from there, it just kind of expanded, meeting more friends, coming back, getting invited to some other groups. That's when I heard about the church group that you guys were going to. So I went to that. And again, it just kind of rolls and goes on from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that question by starting by telling you what not to do, which is what I did for many years. And that's just sit at home and say, man, I wish I had a gaming group. Because if you're just sitting at home and wishing it isn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so the answer to me is go out and go to some of those gaming things and see what happens, right? Mm-hmm. Meetup is an app that you can use, put in your interest for board games. You can find local meetups for board games, probably at the library, potentially at some churches. But to me, the key is just go out, start playing some games with some folks at those gaming meetups and just see if who you hit it off with. And that'll give you a chance to, you don't want to get into a gaming group with people you don't like, but by going to some of those, you see who you click with. In my case, I got lucky. I met David on one of my first times going out, but wouldn't have happened if I didn't put myself out there. And so to me, it's just get out there.
And you guys met at a gaming store, correct?
We've actually met at a Protospio, which is a gaming convention.
Right.
At a game store, yeah. Game design convention at a gaming store.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
David, what do you think? You're very much out in this community as well.
Yeah, if I was a first timer and I'm just looking for a game group, I think my best piece of advice for somebody is, just like Chris said, put yourself out there, but also if you know when it's starting, be on time. Like, you don't want to come late, because a lot of these game groups, I think a lot of mistakes that I see first time people make is like they'll come, even to some of our events, but they'll come like 20, 25 minutes late, and then we're all playing and all the groups have started. And then it's just kind of an awkward situation, because it's like we want to be hospitable to them, but at the same time, we're all, in a 45-minute to an hour game. Mm-hmm. So I think, if you're going to go to one of these game groups, which I think you should do, just make sure you're on time. Like, just be on time, be prompt, and I think you'll probably fit in, because most people I meet at these events are pretty nice.
Yeah, if not, show up a little bit early, settle in, grab a drink or some food that's there, kind of talk to people. I know a couple of people end up showing up early to our one group that we play on the last Friday of every month, and people do come and, hey, what are you playing? What's new? You kind of get a feel for some of the people, too, that you may want to play with. I actively don't look for gaming groups, I would say, but I know I've been in the position where I've wanted to join a group of something, and I remember sitting out in the parking lot, like, terrified to go into somewhere, because you're scared. You don't know what to do. And like, you really have to kind of psych yourself up a little bit and just say, what's the worst that could happen? Really, go in, put yourself out there, be approachable, be friendly, and really, take a chance and get out there and just, if it's something you really like to do, you're going to try and make it work. So I would encourage anybody, like everybody here is saying, to really, just go for it.
Yeah. Or try to bring a friend. Sometimes that makes it a little bit easier. I know, Pete and Dave, you guys normally come to events together, which is nice. At least somebody else, which could help. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's one of the things. Dave and I did go to a lot of these events together. We actually did gaming ourselves, and when a lot of times we're playing 2 players, but we have games where we want to play more. And when you go with somebody that and then you kind of bring that 1 or 2 people in with you, almost like you're hosting it. And, it's nice because you got a little comfort zone with your friend. And, it also helps when you're teaching the game that you have 2 of you working at it versus just yourself, because that's a lot of mental overhead when you're trying to teach games new, especially to new players who may not know how to play that game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, David. So those are our opinions on just advice of trying to find a game group. And if anybody's out there and you really think of something or something worked well for you, or, we missed it, please let us know. We really would love to hear from you guys and hear about the topics that we do talk about, because it helps us grow and learn more as well. So just let us know by sending us an email. You can do that at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. We'd love to have you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or on BGG, or check out our website at thefifthmeeple.com. And before you forget, why not take a second to hit the subscribe button so you never miss one of our shows. If you want to help us grow, one of the best ways is to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We're actively always looking at those and reading them, and they do help us. So if you do, you just might get a shout out on one of our shows in the future. And as always, we always just thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts just for allowing us to do this, and so much for listening and your guys' interactions all over the place. So thanks so much. All right, guys. Well, I see the pace car, so we're going to go get our racing gear on. But when we return, we'll get into our thoughts on Downforce.
Downforce is a 2 to 6 player hand management race and betting game that positions you trackside as you buy, influence, and bet on some of the world's fastest automobiles. You start your engine with a hand of speed cards, representing your ability to influence the movement of all cars involved in the race. 6 cars will race, regardless of player count. Each car is paired with a unique ability and auctioned off one by one, with players using their speed cards to do the bidding. Each player must buy at least 1 card. Then the green flag drops and the race begins. In clockwise order, players take turns playing a single speed card from their hand. Each card shows a number of different colored cars, each paired with a number representing the distance each car will move. Not all cars are featured on each card, and the cars will move in the order listed on the card. Determining when to play each card from your hand is key to effectively influencing the outcome, because there's only so much space on the track, and if a car is blocked, it loses any remaining movement. Players may choose to move cars strategically so that they do get blocked. 3 times during the race, play pauses and everyone bets on which car they believe will win the race. After all cars have finished the race, you earn money if the cars you bet on took first, second, or third place, as well as based on the finishing position of the cars you own. After subtracting the money you spent on the initial auction, the player with the most money takes the checkered flag. Wolfgang Kramer released many versions of this game, including Top Race, which was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres in 1996. In 2017, after several years of unavailability, Rob DeVio and Justin Jacobson made some slight modifications, and Downforce was published by Restoration Games.
All right, guys, let's start your engines and get this race started. So let's discuss, what is it about Downforce that really gets your engine revved up?
I really enjoyed the take that portion. These last couple games that we played, there was a lot of just trying to get people jammed up, try to get your car out front if you can, but really doing a lot of blocking. And it was a good group that was able to take that. And to me, as long as you're not going to get upset about it, that can be a fun part of the game. How can I get you this time, and knowing that you're probably going to get me next time?
Yeah, I think it was much more competitive this time that we played. I've played this before in a group, and it seemed, because part of the good thing about that is, even though you have a color car, you could want other cards and colors to win as well. So you're kind of betting on everything. So it's always out there, and you always have that opportunity when you're crossing those different yellow lines to move your person up or change your bet. So that was fun today. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Pete and I kind of had a mutual agreement, or maybe it was a collusion there, that once we bet on each other, we'd just kind of help each other out. I'm not sure if I held up my end of the deal all the time. We'll see.
Maybe not.
How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I think take that is definitely good. It's going to be one of the things I talked about potentially as a negative, because it's kind of a family weight game. Mm-hmm. So, if you are playing with a family, I could see how, if you had kids that are playing this game, how that take that element could be not as great in that kind of group. In our group, it was fine, but just kind of be aware maybe if, you're buying it for younger kids, because I think just by looking at the box covers and stuff, I think most of these games that we're playing today are geared more towards family and their family weight. So
there could definitely be some crying if you're playing this. Absolutely.
Getting smacked on those turns. How about you, Pete? What do you think about just some of the things that you really liked about this game?
Well, I'm a real big fan of racing in general. In a former life, I used to race remote control cars. So I've always watched NASCAR and that. So I enjoy racing in general. What I really liked about this game is using the cards actually to move the cars around. And you're not just focusing on your car, you're actually trying to influence other cars. And there's a lot of decision space in those. You only have a handful of cards that you're going to use throughout the whole race. And trying to figure out when to use them is really important. Your car may be blocked, and you don't want to use the card that's going to try to move your car, and then you don't get to move those spaces. So there's some real interesting, decision space in there. And again, do you work with other people trying to clear that way or bottleneck that you get, stuck in?
Yeah.
There are some really neat, cool special powers that you get when you draft your cards. And I think the drafting of this is kind of a nice addition to the racing. In general, you just get your car and, you're trying to do your best that you can. Where this, you're really trying to manipulate what's out on the board, which I think is really unique.
Yeah, I agree. There were some times where, you have a set of cards in your hand and that's what you have for the entire game. And, once you're played with it, it goes out. But there were some times when I think when we all were like, oh, you think it's a simple enough game where you're like, I know my next 3 moves, I'm going to play that. And then you get log jammed or something happens and you can't play that card you thought you were going to zoom by a bunch of other cards in. And yeah, I mean, there's a little more thinking to it, which I think is unique in this game. And it's that's the fun component for me too, when you think you have it made and then you don't.
Yeah, I mean, to me, too, I like one of the positives is I play a lot of racing games, but this game is a racing game, but it's not necessarily who crosses the line first. The win condition is based off of who actually has the most money. So even though your car might not finish first, you can still win this game. And I do like that aspect of it, and it's different than other racing games that I play. So
yeah, that's a great point.
Me, it's something that's a positive.
Yeah, there's a little more betting with it for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to also say that, this game moves fast. The games that we played, I think were the 2 games we played tonight were under 40 minutes. I mean, probably closer to 30 minutes, if not less. So that's a benefit too. It's something that you can bring out. I don't know that I'd call it a filler game, but it's definitely maybe a start of the night game where you can, just do something simple. The game goes by quick. We finished so quick. We said, well, let's play another game. So, that's one other aspect that I enjoy. You're not sitting there for, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and, then the game's over.
Get your own transmission fluid flowing.
Yeah. It's a quick game, but it's also, I think, a relatively quick teach. There's not a huge number of rules to learn. Even whether you learn by yourself or just sit down on someone else to teach you, I think it's relatively quick to pick up. Not a lot of rules.
Yeah, no, and the cards are simple enough to look at, read, and understand. You're not looking at them going, oh, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
Even with the goal cards, too, that was on there, those are fairly simple to know and understand and use and continue to use depending on which one you pulled for the game. So
I thought it was also interesting. We play, we're the 5th people. We play a lot of our games at a 5-player count. All of my plays of this have been at a 5-player count. I think most of the other folks here, that's the case as well. And so you only have so many cards. I think in a 5-player game, you have 8 cards. But still, when to play each one of those cards, you were talking earlier about, being potentially boxed in. But it's a true hand management game where you're saying, okay, not only what am I playing now, but what do I want to have available to me in the future? What do I think is going to happen? And I thought it's not a massive puzzle, but there was some decisions to be made there, not just what benefits me now, but what gives me the flexibility I'm still going to need later on.
Yeah, and at our player count, I definitely thought at one point, I was like, oh, my car's not going to advance because I don't have that color. And I thought, oh, well, somebody else is going to advance the green, and nobody else had that because there's a couple cards that were still out, and I think one was a wild card and one was like a 5 green. So that kind of like, it didn't hurt. I mean, because it's a game, right? It's whatever. But I thought that was interesting too, that you're looking down the road at what you're potentially going to play and pull out, but sometimes those cards aren't even in there. So you can plan all you want, but at some point, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I certainly would have. I played several cards in our games where it didn't move my car at all, And there's a variety of reasons. One might be because, hey, I'm blocking things up.
Yeah.
Someone else is going to move me. But another is, I have this card. All that's on it is an orange 5. I don't have orange, and orange can't move.
Yeah.
That's a great time to play my orange 5 and make sure that, they're down 5 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, you can have cards that are almost throwaway cards for sure, because
Yeah,
you
it
don't
doesn't
want
matter when
anybody
you
else
use
to
them.
move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one other thing here, guys, did you notice who the designer is? Mm-hmm. Wolfgang Kramer, same guy that designed El Grande.
Oh.
Okay, and I mentioned in the discussion here in the opening that this was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres in 1996. El Grande was also nominated for the Spiel des Jahres in 1996. Now, it was an earlier version of this game. He had 2 games up for the Spiel des Jahres. El Grande won. This was another one. So I thought that was really fascinating. This guy had 2 games at the same time, and here we are, 30 years later, 20 years later, and still playing them.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is cool.
I thought that would be a bigger. You guys play. Oh man,
No, that's cool.
Very
I,
interesting.
there was, when I was, Chris is done. He took his headphones up. No, when I was looking up this game earlier, I was laughing and I was telling Chris about it when I came in, because there is a Cleveland and Detroit Grand Prix, which is kind of like this game. And you can flip the board over. One side's Detroit, one side's Cleveland. We here at the Fifth Meeple are in Cleveland area, and I thought it was hilarious that there was a board game that actually had like Cleveland on it. So I don't know, I think that's funny. So I think that's good information too, Chris, that you shared.
yeah. Plus the guy's name's Wolfgang. That's just cool. That's cool.
Amadeus. What about some of the things that you guys feel just may have been a little bit in the pits on this?
We talked about it a little bit earlier, there is a little bit of the take that. And again, you just have to be comfortable with your game group to be able to, get blocked or block somebody. That's part of the fun of the game, so it's just important to really keep that in mind. I wouldn't say it's a negative, but I think it's important that you think about that when you're playing with other people, because you could play very nicely if you wanted to, a family weight game and really not try to block. So that's, just something to think about.
But I think if you're not blocking, it's more of an activity than a game, because if you're playing that nice to where you're not blocking anybody, it's just okay, just play the cards and move. And the whole game is trying to get people to where their cards are coming out and they're not moving. Now, I can understand if you're playing like a family, that's a version I probably wouldn't want to play. If it's just okay, just pick the next card, everybody moves. And
no, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
To me, I know we play a lot of games. Chris had mentioned at the 5-player count, and I've played this game at a couple different player counts. And I think the game actually is a lot simpler when it's at 5 players, which to me sometimes is a negative because I'm looking for a little bit more. Because, I think, I played this at a 3-player count as well. And I think that at a 3-player count, it actually plays a little bit better. So if you're kind of out there wondering why, just because at a 5-player count, normally only one person has 2 cars. And so everybody else is kind of just focused on their 1 car. And a lot of times, when we play at a 5-player count, whoever bids and gets the 2 cars, I've never seen them win. So I don't know, I don't have a ton of plays of this, but, the 10 or 11 plays that I've seen, I've never ever seen somebody that gets the 2 cars win in a single player, with 5 people.
You'd have to get them cheap.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The last game that we played, you actually won because you paid $1 million for your car, and I paid $6 million, and I lost by 3 million points. So that was devastating.
And that was one of my negatives, that you can put yourself in a position if you just wait and let everybody bid it, that you can get a car for $1 million. And I certainly took that approach. And I think after today, we played 2 games before we did it here. After I did that, I think a couple people were trying to get the $1 million car, and that for some of our games, that was a big difference, 1 million versus 6 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, another point that I would say with 5 players is that you see a lot of cars not finish the race. I see this a lot more in a 5-player count even than in a 4-player count, just because you have more cards. And at a 5-player count, if somebody happens to get lucky, and I think, sometimes Pete, your car finished the last race, and maybe you had some green cards in your hand, because I didn't see Daniela's card moving at all. But if somebody goes out, basically all their cards in their hand are no longer in play. So you could really hurt somebody if somehow you got lucky enough to go out and then other people didn't. I know our first game we played together, 3 cars didn't finish. So, sometimes it doesn't feel satisfying, maybe if you're another driver, when there's 3 people that didn't finish a race, which is
and the more take that you play in your game, the more likely it is the cars aren't going to finish, because their movements are coming out and they're not getting movement out of it. And again, there was a lot of it in the games that we played, and we had a lot of them that didn't finish. Well, I mentioned earlier about that in a 5-player game, you only have 8 cards. And so it's a tight little hand management game, but also that means you're going to take a maximum of 8 turns. And for the rest of the time, the other 32 potential turns, you're just sitting there watching. And when it does come time to play your turn, you pick a card and go. And so that's why I was wondering, hey, I've only ever played this at 5. The other thing, if you're playing at a 3-player count, for example, you've got a lot more cards in your hand, you're taking a lot more turns, and maybe you have a little more ability to influence the outcome. And you probably, if you're playing a 3-player game, you have 2 cards. So there's a lot more, I would think, going on at a lower player count. A lot of games we play, I think, are better at 5. This one, I would think, would maybe be better at a lower player count.
Yeah, and I think that's what David was alluding to.
Yeah. And I haven't had that opportunity, but I was glad to hear you say that, because that's the way it seemed.
Yeah.
All right, I'll whoop you at 3 players. Let's find someone else.
Did you guys feel like there was, once someone got out ahead, that maybe it wasn't a foregone conclusion, but it was going to be tough to catch them?
Yes.
Yeah, especially when it comes to betting, because you know, when you cross those yellow lines, you get to place a bet on different parts of the race. So you get your first, second, and third, call it leg or whatever. But I know a lot of us were betting on the same cars when you see one that's clearly ahead and it looks like they are a runaway winner. I know, Chris, we basically did the same thing. I think, David, you were on the same page as us.
Yeah, that last game we played, it just felt obvious, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I guess, that would be something else. Could there be a little hidden mystery there? But
what if you couldn't bet on the lead car?
Well, that's the thing. The blue car was the lead car in the last game that we played, and that's the one that won. So I thought that was the same for the first game too. That the cars that were out in front,
right? Because everybody bets on it, and then you have incentive to keep that guy out front. And if you couldn't bet on the first one, then okay, now you want to get other ones moving, and maybe we can play that as a variant. Because otherwise, it seems self-deterministic. Because even if it's not your car, you got money. Or you got money riding on
the first car that crosses that first yellow, you can't bet on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think if you play this game a lot too, though, it can get a little samey because there's only so many powers in the we played the base game, so there's only so many powers you can have in the game, and it's just, I think sometimes it could feel samey. I don't know if I know there's been talk. I know, Chris, you alluded to it earlier when we were playing that some cards might be overpowered that the community thinks, and I don't know if we saw that, but I think there are some better cards than other ones for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think we saw them in the base game. I think if you go out and look, they'll also say get the expansions, don't play with the initial boards and all that. So maybe we need to find the expansions and give them a go. Mm-hmm. I agree. This could get samey after a while. Yeah,
because my power was the same for both games. That was just how it drew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So David, let's head to the collector's corner. Is the purse worth the buy-in for you?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So right now, Amazon has the price listed at $39.25 as of our airing today, which I think is quite a little bit high for this kind of game. I know right now, if you go to Board Game Geek, there's people selling copies for $20 new. You still have to pay them shipping if you trust users on there. But I think that even used, I see this game for $10. So to me, when I saw that it was at a $40 price point, I can't remember what I bought it for because it's been a while, because I've owned this game for a while, but I felt like $40 was quite high for what I was getting out of this box. I thought the price point would be closer to $20-25.
Yeah,
personally.
I agree.
I mean, even local board game stores right now, I'm seeing this game priced closer to $30. So, I think Amazon is high on this one. I would say if you are interested in a game like this, I would find it somewhere else locally, because I do think on this occasion, Amazon's actually the high price.
Yeah, I don't think to me, 39 is pretty high for what you're getting.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. And so let's take it over to Pete, though. Deluxifier. Would you Deluxify anything in this set?
Yeah, there's a couple things you can do. You could use the Mario Karts for the cars, which I think a lot of people do with all the different colors, because it's really just the color of the car that matters. And I think thematically that plays into the Mario Kart, because you are blocking. There's times where you're slingshotting ahead. Actually, though, the production of the cars themselves are really, really good. Mm-hmm. I like the size. That was something that I didn't mention earlier, but it was very easy to see on the table, where the cars were in relationships to the other ones, and even the spaces that the cars are on are fairly clear, so you know which lanes you're in. But as far as deluxifying it, yeah, you could go the Mario Kart route. I think would be really about the only thing that I would do with it. Everything else is on the paper pad, so it's not like you can upgrade the coins, which if it had it, I'd be all over that. But
you did say we could laminate the cards and kind of do the reuse. So that's
the scorecards.
Yeah, scorecards.
Yeah, that's an option that I know a lot of people do, especially in the games where they use those pads. Just get an inexpensive laminator for $20 off as Amazon or wherever, and
use
that'll
the dry
save,
erases.
Use the dry erase pens, and that'll at least save you some of the ripping and throwing away the sheets.
Okay, yeah, awesome. All right, guys, any final thoughts on this final lap before we move off?
I thought this was a good game. I don't feel like it's a great game. I want to play it at a lower player count, which I haven't had a chance to do. I think it'd be a much different game. I still don't think it's going to be something that I would be requesting to take off my shelf. I'd play it once or twice, but I'll play it if someone brings it out. I'm not going to ask for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. It's not going to find its way into my collection. It's a lighter weight game, and again, great to take to a game night, and again, break the ice and that. But as far as the strategies and that, we talked a little bit. It could get a little samey.
Yeah.
David.
Yeah, I would say this is definitely like a gateway icebreaker type game, like Pete was mentioning. I would definitely kind of play it in that setting. I do like that it only takes around 30 minutes, to play a game of this. So it's not something that you have to sit around and play a lot of. But like kind of Chris was mentioning too, I would play it at a lower player count. I would roll it out at 5 if you have 5 people, but it's not necessarily, if you're looking for something more strategic, it's not something that's going to be up your alley that way. How about you, Danielle?
I think thematically, if someone likes racing games, pull it out and see, if they like this game, because I don't think you're going to teach someone newer to the gaming community as being a newer person to this community, something like Heat or something like Rallyman Dirt. Like this is going to be a little bit more intro, see if they like it, see if they understand kind of how it works. And, if like you said, Pete, you're into NASCAR, you might find other people who like that same theme. So I think thematically it might work. I think I'm in agreement with everybody talking about the game being 30 minutes, pull it out, let it come to get your juices flowing, and liven it up before game night and just have fun with it. You're not going to sit down and play 18 rounds of this at all. But two games was fun today, and so I thought it was good.
And despite what I said earlier, I did buy this game not too long ago for my nephew. He's a racing fan.
Oh, for someone, okay.
Yeah, it's for my nephew. He's a racing fan.
Oh, good.
My dad enjoys racing as well. I haven't had a chance to play it with him yet, but I'm looking forward to going there, and it'll probably be a 3-player game, and I'll have my experience with 2 people that are going to be pretty excited. They're not heavy gamers, but they're going to enjoy playing a racing themed game that's in their wheelhouse with respect to level of complexity.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, I think we spun our donuts here for Downforce, and let's take a short break, and then we'll bring the heat up with Camel Up.
Camel Up is a 3 to 8 player dice rolling, betting, and bluffing game where crazy camels circle the desert in the most raucous race ever to hit the dunes. During play, 5 camels move around the racetrack based on dice that are released, one at a time, from a cardboard or plastic pyramid. If a camel stops on a space already occupied by 1 or more camels, they stack on top of each other. If a camel with other camels on top of it moves, those extra camels go along for the ride. On your turn, you can take one of 4 actions. One option is to take a leg betting tile, backing the camel you believe will be in front at the end of the current portion of the race. Or you can place your desert tile on an empty space of the racetrack. Any camel landing on that tile will earn you a coin and will then either move 1 extra space forward or 1 space backward. Alternatively, you can bet on the overall winner or loser of the race, but you only have 1 card for each camel, and once you bet, you can't take it back. Finally, you can choose to take a pyramid tile, which will earn a small amount of money at the end of the leg, and when taking this action, you also release a die from the pyramid and move the corresponding camel. When the pyramid stack runs out, that leg of the race ends, and players earn or lose coins based on their bets and where the camels sit on the track, with camels on the top of the stack being considered further ahead. After a quick reset, play continues with the new leg, repeating until 1 camel finally crosses the finish line. At that point, the game ends. After scoring for the leg bets, players earn money for correctly having bet on the winning horse, with earlier bets winning more. The same process occurs for the overall loser, and players who made incorrect bets in either category get sand in their britches and also lose a coin. After all bets are rectified, the player with the most money gets over the hump and claims the victory. Camel Up was designed by Stefan Bogen and was first published in 2014 by Agerspiel.
Ooh-wee, it is hot out here in the desert, but it's about to get even hotter. So let's talk. What is it about Camel Up that just makes you want to hump it? You guys know this was part of my Cardboard Crushes back when we did our Cardboard Crush episode. If you want to check that out, go back there and check that episode out. We all had different things that we were talking about there that we were really, really feeling. This was one of mine. It still is one of mine because it is just that much fun. So let's talk about the things. Chris, Why do you want to hump this game?
This game is fun. It's crazy, but I mean, it just is. You play it, and you're smiling, and you're laughing, and silly things can happen when you think you got it figured out, and you start taking the betting cards, and the next thing you know, something ridiculous happens, and a camel jumps on top of one, and then something crawls underneath the other one, and next thing you know, you're sitting there holding losing bets, and everybody's laughing at you, and you're laughing at yourself too, because it's just so silly how things. It's not just, oh yeah, that guy's out in front. Without a doubt, something crazy is going to happen, and it's going to be like, okay, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I've played games of this where a camel's way in the back, and we say, well, if this happens, and this happens, and this happens, this one will win. And I remember being at one of the game nights, and I said, no, some guy said, no, that's never going to happen. Well, guess what? It happened.
The stars aligned.
Yeah, it can get really crazy. And then we start talking about, well, this one might win this and that, and if this happens, there's just a lot of craziness that goes on. You need to be okay with that. There's no perfect information, and then you're also playing a lot of odds. 1 out of 3. The camels are going to move 1 to 3 spaces, sometimes forward, sometimes back, and just goofy things happen. I think that's the joy of this game. The times I've played it, it's just been fun. Everybody's laughing. I've never had a dull game of Camel Up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say ditto on what you guys just said. I've always had fun playing this game as far as that goes. There are just so many crazy moments that could happen in a race. And, I think the races that the crazier stuff that happens, those are the nights you kind of remember. Those are the times that I think some people that are on the fence about being board gamers become board gamers after playing a game like this with those moments. And I think, that's hard for a lot of games to produce. And this game produces them in spades. And so, hats off to the designer of this game, because I do think there's a lot of fun to be had here, even for experienced and new gamers at the same table.
Again, I'm reiterating everything that everybody's already said. You cannot come into this game and be like, I'm going to strategize the living daylights out of this thing. You got to come, be weird, place your bets, do something random,
take risks.
Take risks, make your odds, put the camel you think is going to lose down in the very first thing and on the losing side tile and see what happens. You don't know, and that's a fun part about it. If you're coming into this game and you're walking in going, I'm really going to be calculated and serious. Like I think we started off a little bit serious on one of our games. And I was like, you guys, this is not that serious. Like don't analyze the living daylights out of it.
The first time I played this game, I mean, I'm a very conservative guy, and the first time that we played this together, the first time I played it, period, I came in with that. I'm gonna strategize this. I'm gonna be very conservative, and I just got destroyed.
Yeah.
And I love that one of you, or I think 2 of you, just said you got to take risks, and that's ever since then, that's how I've played it. It's just okay. You got to put yourself out there, and if it doesn't work out, you're still gonna have a great time.
Yeah, this was crazy the first time we played it at the church, and we were all standing around a table. I think we played like max people who could play the game, and it was like crazy. There's like money flying around, camels moving. I don't think we played it right, but we definitely were having fun doing it.
Yeah, I'll add our buddy Dave. He actually borrowed my game and took it to his parents over last weekend, and he taught it to them, and they really enjoyed it. His parents are up in the age, and they grasped it too. So it's really not complicated. That's the other thing. You have about 5 actions, but they're real simple actions. Take a money, roll a die, place the tile down.
Move a camel,
make some bets, bet on the winner, bet on the loser. And then you move on, and the next person in line is already kind of making their decision on what they're going to do. And sometimes you take the move, or somebody will snag out that 5 bet that I wanted, and because I didn't think he'd see it coming. But that's the fun part about it too. Just all the different options that you have with the game.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the chaos of Wall Street. Like you're in there and you're just kind of like placing bets and doing like crazy things. You don't know, people are yelling and kind of like going crazy, and you don't know what anybody else is doing. But then it has a little bit of that horse racing aspect too, where it's fairly quick. This is a 30-minute game. The 2 times we played it recently.
The other thing I'll say, I mean, we're saying, hey, it's not a heavy strategizing game, but some of the crazy things that happen are a little bit, I'll say, by design. We have the desert tiles where you can place them down on the board, and if a camel lands on it, you decide you put it on the Oasis side, that camel will move forward 1. You put it on the Mirage side, the camel will move backwards 1. And a lot of times I'm looking at it and at the board and thinking, okay, I got this figured out. It's going to go this way. And David, it's typically you say, oh, hey, there's a spot or a desert tile, and you slap it down like, oh, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Right. And then the dice still have to come out a certain way, but it's like, wow, I hadn't considered that, especially when you start to stack this and stack that, and all of a sudden everything changes, and I'm sitting here losing cash.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, it reminds me of like a Rube Goldberg machine where, kind of Pete was like alluding to earlier, if one thing hits this thing just perfectly, then it chains this thing. And this is kind of what this game is. If you ever, look one up on YouTube, if you don't know what I'm talking about, but those machines, like how people create them, they're fascinating as well. And you'll just get addicted to YouTube videos if you research what that is.
And then finally, 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I think every game we play of this is 30 minutes or maybe slightly less. And again, fun the whole time. Your brain doesn't hurt afterwards. Shoot, every time we play, it's like, well, we could get another one of those in, and we're typically, we enjoyed that. Let's do it again.
Yeah, and I really like the camaraderie that we have here too as a group when we're playing this game, because you can look around the table. Maybe camaraderie isn't the wrong word, but take that as well with this game is you can see who's picked some of the camels to advance. Your final bets are private, but some of the rounds that we play are very okay. I see Chris is looking for the white, and Pete's looking for the yellow, and David's looking for the orange. And what do I want to advance? And maybe someone's behind, and so you can play a little bit of that as well. And I like that. You can see other people's kind of what they're gunning for sure.
Yeah, I'd make the suggestion if you're going to put your card out there, don't toss it out there and let it flip up
like you did.
the wrong side, so everybody knows who you bet on.
Yeah, the orange.
So then everybody's trying to make that camel
hey,
go
you got
forward.
you got $8 from it, so that was good.
Yeah, it worked out for me.
Yeah.
But try to keep your cards down.
Yeah, and I do like it because the dice that are involved with this game, it's not like a take that element, which a lot of racing games have, just because I feel like that's a core mechanic in a lot of racing games is, kind of a take that, your car's trying to get first, but you're kind of playing the game in this sense. It doesn't have that bad connotation because the dice are randomized and they come out of this pyramid. And so nobody knows what's going to happen. And if something bad does happen to you, you really can't blame anybody else. You kind of laugh because you're blaming the game, and which I like that element of it, unless you really love take that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the camel in the room or the elephant in the room. The one disappointing thing with the version that we have, I got one of the original ones, is that pyramid. Mm-hmm. The dice just don't come out of it right. You really got to work at that when you're first doing it. You got to get used to that, and that's the only downside. I've actually considered. I like the game so much. I actually considered getting the newer version, but I do have the expansions with it, and I'm thinking I might just get the newer version and use the pyramid out of that. Or maybe, Chris, maybe you can 3D one for me.
I was just going to say, my guess is I haven't looked on Thingiverse. My guess is there's probably a couple different options to print your own.
Yeah,
pyramid.
and I think that would be a great upgrade if somebody can do it. I do believe that the newer version comes with a plastic pyramid, which I think works much better than the cardboard one with the little rubber band. So I did want to bring that up. I think that's, a downside of the game.
Yeah.
But, not taking away the fun of it. But it's just one of those things, and we'll talk about that later.
CP, I think that's actually one of the better parts because I get to watch you guys all struggle with trying to get a dice out, and I just laugh because I don't think I've ever actually used the dice mechanic on the pyramid just because I watch everybody else struggle with it, and I'm like, I'll do a different action.
And what's funny is you're sitting there trying. They tell you set it on the table. When you hear the dice drop, then you pick it up. You hear the dice hit the table. You pick it up, and there's nothing there.
It's a magic
So
show.
then you put it back down, you do it again, then two dice come out. All right, what the heck's going on here?
I love it.
So anything else about Camel Up that really kind of chaps your oasis on this?
So I mentioned the desert tiles earlier, where you can advance the camels +1 or -1, and you get a coin there. But unless I'm forgetting something, that's really the only way any player has to influence what actually happens in the game. Right? Maybe you can say, I didn't choose to get a die at this point, but still, that's not really changing how the camels move. You have one way of doing it. That's the desert tile. And when you have a lot of players, in a lot of cases, you don't even ever get to get your desert tile out there. And so I think that's how this game is. It's a 1.5 weight on BGG. It's a little too light for me, maybe from that standpoint, because I'm sitting there saying, I can bet and all that, but I really can't influence anything. And we talked in previous shows about, hey, I'd like to be able to, throw some things at me, but give me a chance to actually mitigate that. And there's really very little ability to do that in my mind.
Yeah, I think though I don't think everybody's supposed to put their desert tile out. Would you agree with that during the round?
They can't. There's not enough room, and again, if you put it in certain places, it doesn't matter anyway. But that's my point. If I'm not one of the first couple players in the round, I may never get to put that out, and then I'm just at the mercy of what everybody else does.
But you could also manipulate the plays a little bit by rolling every single time. You may not want to place bets. You may not want to pick up tile cards to do the bet. You could bring all the camels out and end that really quick.
I could, but I guess my point being that doesn't necessarily change anything about what the outcome would be. Whether I take a betting tile and Pete's next and he puts a die out, or I take a die and he takes a betting tile, we're relying on what the die happens. I'm not actually able to truly influence the outcome of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's part of racing, though. When you go to a horse track or whatever, you're at the mercy of what happens at what the horse does, or in this case, the camel. So, you really don't have influence over, they always say influence is an illusion, that you have control over your destiny or whatever. But in this game, there's not a lot. And I think if you had too much, I think that would start taking away from just the funness and the randomness of the game.
Oh, I agree. That's just not the kind of game that this is, to where you can have that much influence for a control freak like me. I'd like to have some, but then I agree, it wouldn't be as funny. You wouldn't be sitting here just laughing the whole entire time. If you did have more, you'd probably be getting upset at somebody.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that people think is a little bit frustrating in this game, or that doesn't really shake out well for them?
Is it Camel Up or Camel Cup? No, I'm just messing with you.
There you go. Write us and let us know.
If you look at BGG, it lists Camel Cup as an alternative name for this game.
Yeah. I think on the second edition, we'll talk about this in the Collector's Corner, but I think they do have an official name.
Interesting. Well, take us right there. Why don't you take us to the Collector's Corner,
we'll
David?
Just go right
Tell
into
us right about
Collector's
it.
Corner.
How much just Camel Up hold up?
Yeah, so right now you can find Camel Up on Amazon and at Target for $32 as of the airing today. Like I said before, there is a first and a second edition. So the edition we are covering right now is the first edition. I don't think it's no longer in print. You can find copies on the secondhand market. Used, they go anywhere between like $20 all the way up to $50 I've been seeing. Wow. So, some people like the artwork a little bit better. It's a kind of a different feel. On the second edition, they actually added 2 more camels to that edition. So there's a black and a white camel. And instead of only having 5 dice, there are actually 6 dice in the pyramid that you roll, so 1 dice doesn't come out during the round. So it's a little bit different take. I mean, they're pretty similar, but as far as that goes, but the second edition seems to be right around that same price point too. So whether you get the first edition or the second edition, they're kind of both at the same price point, but they play a little differently as far as that goes. And then also with the first edition of Camel Up, the version that we played, there is an expansion to that you cannot play with the second edition. So if you're interested, it's called Super Cup, and that expansion is actually a lot more pricey. So a lot of times if you're looking up to get the expansion on this game, it's anywhere between like $50 to $75. So it's actually more than the base game of Camel Up.
So David, you mentioned there were 2 extra camels in the second edition. The interesting thing there is that those 2 extra camels, they're going around the board the opposite direction as all the other camels. And if something hops on top of them and then they move, those camels are moving the opposite direction. And so if you think Camel Up first edition is crazy, there's some additional craziness that come in from those crazy camels that they add.
Oh, yeah, definitely. As far as like value goes, I think that, with the components and stuff that we're seeing, I think this game does justify, around a $30 to $35 price point. It is a little bit bigger box that you're getting with the game. And then, the second edition has, better components. If you just compare the two at the table, you'll probably kind of gravitate towards that second edition. And it's got some palm trees popped up. The board looks a little bit more inviting, but the artwork's totally different. So kind of like going back to our question, is it called Camel Cup or Camel Up? According to the second edition, it's called Camel Up because the C is actually above, where on the first edition of the box, it's kind of, you can read either way.
So they made that distinguishing mark.
Yes.
Okay.
It's been settled.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess one thing real quick. This is going back to the positives, and I meant to bring this up. The camels are as you're playing this game, you're stacking camels on top of each other. And good job to Z-Man Games for the version we had. Those camels stay on top of each other. We had them stacked up 4 or 5 high. They weren't falling over.
No.
They were nice and stable. Unlike a couple games we play where you say you're supposed to stack things up, and once you get a certain height, they're just down. These were very stable, and that worked really well.
And we were bumping the table too. And
yeah,
so it was great.
If they weren't stable, you'd like, I can't play this game.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah, they're big and chunky, and they work well.
All right, Pete, what do you got for us in the deluxeified version of this game? What are you thinking?
Well, Daniela, you know what I've already done to this game.
It's fantastic.
So do you like it?
I do.
Yeah. What I did to my version is I actually bought real Egyptian pound coins and used those instead of the cardboard money. And I got some of the paper Egyptian money as well. Again, to me, that just really makes it that much better. It's fun to play with the coins. You're changing in the coins for the bills, and everybody's looking around. Oh, you got the 10. You got your 10. Well, I got to trade my 2 5s in, and that just makes it much more fun, versus cardboard. So that's the one thing that I've really done. Like I said, the other thing that I would do, and for $30, I might just do it, is just buy that new version and just use the new pyramid in that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I remember when we first played this, Pete, at the church, and again, we were all standing around and the money was flowing and the camels were moving. It just felt very fun. And I think that the coins add that little bit of noise. It adds that little bit of paper money feel. You got it in your hand. You feeling good about yourself. It adds to the fun of the actual betting part of this game for sure.
Yeah. You're betting with real money. Mm-hmm. It's very thematic. So
I think the second version actually has a stand-up. Does second edition have a stand-up palm tree?
Yes,
on the
it
board
does
as well?
have a stand-up palm tree.
Okay.
Does it do anything, or is it just thematic?
It just looks
I think
cool.
it just
Okay.
sits there.
Yeah.
So there are probably other things you can do landscape-wise if you really want to, but it wouldn't be key to the game. It would just be sort of for
I think that
ambiance.
board's also bigger too.
Yeah,
it's
I think
a
it's
little bit more spots. Again, you got the
Yeah.
camels going the other way. So
The track is not a square.
Okay.
Either.
All right. Cool. All right. So, any guys' final thoughts on Camel Up before the Saharan sun sinks? Chris, what do you think as the intellectual introvert on this game?
Yeah, this game, it breaks me from the extroversion. This game is fun. It's crazy. I have a really good time playing it. Would I look at this and say, this is my favorite kind of game? No.
Do you have a little crush on it?
I don't even know if I have a little crush on it.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't bought it yet, right?
But you've played it.
It's fun. I've played it. I will not turn down a game of Camel Up, but I'm not going to put it in my my top 25 games either.
Yeah, understood.
But for what it is, it's a lot of fun.
All right.
yeah, I enjoy it. It is probably in my top 20 games. Again, I usually gravitate to more of a heavier game, but this is just so much fun to bring out, especially new players. Again, we talk about being able to teach a game to somebody who hasn't really played. You give them just a couple options and they get it really quick. It's just so much fun to play. I just really enjoy it. David?
Yeah, so for me, this game is definitely a game that the more people you bring to the table, I think the better this game shines. Some games like we were just talking about Downforce earlier, sometimes we're like, oh, I don't know if it actually sings at 5. I actually think this case, if you brought in like even 6, 7 players, it would sing just as well as if you had 5.
This game goes up to 8, and
Yep.
if you play it at 8, it is good fun. It's just crazy because it's just fun.
And I also think this game, too, just coming from the collectors, my background is this game is something that it is collectible. I think, I have a copy of it and I got a really good deal on the expansion. So, I know I can make money off this game because I got it bundled together and my expansion's not open. So, there's definitely a resale value, too, to the first edition of this game that people are looking to buy, especially people that might have let it slip their collection, but maybe want it back because now they have kids that they want to teach and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and I think for myself, I think this game is another good game for intro to betting, intro to racing, intro to that kind of type of game if you're into that thing. And I always think the Saharan camel theme is fun. I really like Through the Desert. I like a couple of those other games that we play like that too. So thematically wise, I like this game. I think Fergie had it right when she said, "What you gonna do with all that junk?" and then started singing "My lovely lady lumps, my hump, my hump, my humps." She was right.
I don't know what just happened.
Chris, she was right. I'm telling you. You don't even have to ask. She was right.
There's 2 people in this room that have no clue what that song is.
Okay, well, at least you and I do. We're young.
we talking about the English princess, or what are we talking about?
Bruh. What? Okay. All right, that's going to take us across the finish line, but now it's time for a camel of a different color. Let's head to our tents and get started on today's Battle of the Funnest.
All right, everyone, the moment of truth has arrived. It's time to separate the men from the boys, or more appropriately, the games from the toys. We're pitting these games head-to-head against each other in the ultimate face-off. In one corner, weighing in at 1.75 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 7.3. Setting the pace since its primary publish date, grabber of the green that never yields to yellow as it chases the checkered, drafting and drifting while up and down shifting, parading past pit stops in a push-to-pass power play, the primo possessor of the pole position, Downforce. In the other corner, weighing in at 1.5 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 7.6. Nestled in the never-ending dunes of the Egyptian desert, surviving Saharan sandstorms with an internal oasis, the spirited spitter of the barren brown badlands, the dromedary desert dweller and Bactrian to Bactrian caravan champion, one hump or two, Camel Up. And now let's find out which one laps the competition in our battle of the Funnest Showdown. Okay, guys, you remember how this works. We're going to evaluate these games head-to-head in 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. We'll each choose which game we think outdoes the other in each category. The game that gets the most votes wins the category, and the game that wins the most categories takes the prize in our Battle of the Funnest. So let's get to it, starting with theme and production. David.
Yeah, so for theme and production on this one, this was actually a close battle. I do like racing games, but I do have a heart for camels. So for whatever reason, I got through the desert. The theme just speaks to me. I love the artwork on the first edition cover, and just kind of how the production is. I like the big chunky camel pieces, the meeples that, we like to collect. And so to me, just all of that in the package goes well. I think Downforce does a good job, but I'm going to have to give this one to Camel Up. Going over to Pete.
This one, it's probably not too hard for me. I like Camel Up a little bit better. Other than the pyramid, the production-wise, I think they're very close. I do like the cars in Downforce, but the theme really kind of comes out. You're betting on Goofy a race, and it just comes out. Downforce is a great racing game, but that's what it is. So the theme here kind of carries it over the finish line for me. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Camel Up too. I think the theme is better in Camel Up. Production is probably a little better in Downforce, but the theme carries it for me. And the way the art goes along with the fact that this is just a crazy game. You look at the box, you can't help but smile. You know you're going to have fun, and then you get in it and you do. And there aren't that many camel racing games out there. I don't think so. It's a nice, probably unique theme. So for me, it's Camel Up. Danielle, are we sweeping it, or what do you think?
I think we're going to sweep it because I, too, like the camel theme. I like the desert theme. I do like the racing theme production as well. Not so much on some of the games we've talked about before, but I like Flamme Rouge. I like Downforce. I've wanted to bring this back to the table for a couple months now to replay that. But I think overall, again, when we've just been talking about the artwork and look of it all, the characters are goofy. You're kind of looking at them. We were all commenting on that. We weren't really doing that in Downforce. And so for me, Camel Up takes the theme and production.
All right, so Camel Up across the board. That was like a Secretariat-style win where it just blew everybody away. Camel Up goes out in the lead, winning theme and production. We're going to move on to mechanisms. I'm actually going to start this one, and I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to go with Downforce on this one. I talked about Camel Up and the fact that you don't really have a lot of agency to impact how that game's going to turn out, and I really like the way you're managing your hand with the limited hand that you may have, and just I had a lot of fun putting cars behind other cars and getting them stuck up. That was a fun mechanism for me. I'm going to go with Downforce, and I'm going to kick it to Pete.
Yeah, this one's a close one for me, too. I could go either way. I agree with you on the cards. I think it's a very streamlined mechanism that it has, but for me, that's the only mechanism. I like the Camel Up different options that we have. Again, we talked about being able to, move the camel or bet on the camel. So from a mechanism, I'm going to go with Camel Up on this one by a nose. Daniela, what do you think?
So there's two different sides of this that I'm thinking of as well. So with Downforce, I really like the cards, and as Chris spoke to, getting people stuck, getting people clogged up in the race and going through that. However, I like the betting aspect on Camel Up much more. And I think if we're playing this betting game, there was a little bit of betting going on with Downforce, but I didn't think that came through as well as Camel Up. So I'm going to stick with Camel Up on the mechanism portion of this. David, how about you?
This is going to be interesting. So I agree with kind of what Danielle was saying, except I think that I flipped to the other side. So I just like that little bit of agency. I do feel like in Camel Up, I don't have almost any control of what's going on, which is part of the fun. Mm-hmm. But I just, for me in a game, when I'm looking at mechanisms, I want to be able to influence the outcome a little bit more, not just through betting. So for me, I'll have to give this one to Downforce.
All right, so we have a 2-2 tie, but we are the fifth meeple here. And so even though we only have 4 people at the microphones, you've heard us talk about Dave before. Dave is our fifth meeple. And before he left today, because we played both of these games a couple of final times before recording here, we asked Dave, since we now have 4 around the table, hey, we may need a tiebreaker. Can you go through each of these categories? And if we end up with a tie, we're going to use you as a tiebreaker. And he did leave us an answer. We haven't looked at it until now. David's got the paper in front of him. David, what did Dave like?
Yeah, so Dave must think a lot like me. So we are going Downforce on this one, is what Dave has written down in his paper.
There you go. I was talking, I feel like Dave's like the Snuffleupagus of our game group. For those of you who are old enough to realize that for a long time, Snuffleupagus, the only person that ever saw him was Big Bird. And I feel like we talk about him all the time, but no one's actually ever seen him in the wild. So, but now he's gonna start influencing things a little bit here. Downforce takes mechanisms 3-2. We'll go next to value for your time, and I'm going to kick it to Daniela.
All right, value for the time. Both of these games are nice, great, get in, get out, play them. I think overall, the value for my time, personally, when I'm playing this, I'm going to stick with the Camel Up theme because it's 30 minutes. Downforce was a little bit longer, not by very much, but good warm-up game, get the juices flowing, and get a game played. Again, not too hard. Pull it out before maybe a heavier game, and just a great little fun game to get to a game night. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, so to me, I'm judging this one. They're both roughly, like Danielle was saying, around a 30-minute play time. So, when time's not a factor, I'm just thinking, what do I have more, fun kind of playing with as far as my value goes there? What am I looking for out of something? And so for me on this one, I think I'm looking for Camel Up on this just for my value for my time, because there's not a lot of games where I could sit down and just kind of kick it with people and laugh. If I want a game that, I'm definitely racing and, slamming people into walls, I think there's probably a little bit better games out there than Downforce, at least at a higher level of mechanisms and, just intricacy and weight. So to me, on this one, with the same weight, I'm going with Camel Up on this one for value for my time. I'm going to throw it over to Chris.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd never come to me because I'm not really sure what to do here. Because I agree, Camel Up's probably a little more fun, but we have a category called Fun Factor, and so I'm looking at which one do I get more out of for what I'm looking out of a game, and that's not necessarily the one I have more fun with, but what do I feel like I really got more out of or had more influence over, whatever the case may be. I'm actually going to go with Downforce here. It doesn't mean that I'd rather play it over Camel Up, but I think as far as what I can get of a different experience, I feel like, again, Camel Up's an activity from that standpoint sometimes more than a game. I'm going to go with Downforce. I'll kick it to Pete.
Yeah, I love Camel Up, but I agree with you, Chris. If I'm going to play a game, I do like having that agency over it. So value for me between these two games, again, if I want something to strategize, I do like the value that Downforce brings over Camel Up. So I think we're going to have to do another check with Dave to see what he came up with.
Yeah, it's becoming the Dave show. It's 2-2 on value for your time. David, where did he take us?
Dave says Camel Up. So, see, me and Dave must be on the same page today.
I guess it's almost like you have the same name or something. All right, so Camel Up, buy a nose or buy a hump, takes value for your time. Camel Up is now up 2-1 over Downforce, and we go on to replayability. I'm going to go first here. I'm going to go with Camel Up. I feel like Downforce, after a couple of plays for me, is going to be, while I may have more agency, it's still going to get a little samey over and over again, whereas Camel Up, at least, because it's so random, it's going to be different every time, and things are going to be crazy. I'm going to go with Camel Up. I'm going to kick it to Pete.
Yeah, I agree with you. The replayability, we can play this every time. It's going to be a different experience every time. The mechanics are going to be the same and all that, but you don't know who's going to win. It comes out, at the end of the game where we're figuring out who's got the most money. And actually, the points were very, very close. And again, everybody doing something different. Replayability, just a lot of options with it. It's always a fun game. It's always something different. Daniela, what do you think about this one?
So I think I'm going to shock you guys. And I think with replayability, even though Camel Up's my jam, replayability, I kind of like Downforce a little bit more for this, for the simple fact that I think you can try and manipulate and play the cars in your hand and the cards that you get a little bit more in that game. So you might be coming up with different strategies where Camel Up is a little more chancy. I think in Downforce, you might be able to manipulate and use that replayability a little bit more and say, how could I play it differently this time? How can I play it differently this time? Maybe some people think, no, you're going to play it the same every single time. And maybe that's true, but I'd like to play it a little bit more with a couple different player counts and see how I could manipulate that board. So I'm going to say Downforce for that. All right, David, you're next.
Yeah, so for me on this one with replayability, I've played both of these games, I want to say around 10 to 12 times already right now. And where I'm sitting at with that is I am actually going to lean towards Camel Up. I feel like I've seen everything Downforce has to offer in about my 8th gameplay. I think that, there is an expansion I heard for that one, so I do think it would help with the variable player powers, because there's only 6 that I think come with the box game. Where Camel Up, I just think there's different ways that you can win there. It's never the same game, twice. There's always just kind of crazy stuff that happens. And, I just think that there's more paths right now to victory on that one and just kind of what I can choose to do within the game. So for me, I'm going to go with Camel Up.
All right, so Camel Up takes replayability 3-1. Goes up 3-1 overall. Let's go into the fun factor. I got an idea which way this one's going to go, but let's do it anyway. David, where do you stand?
Oh, this one's Camel Up for me all the way. I just think that the fun and the smiles that I see on people, like I said earlier in my review of it, was, I just think this is a game where people that were maybe, on the edge of, playing board games, this is where they can become board gamers and get into the mainstream hobby. Just with the good times that this game is going to bring them, they'll be wanting to find out, hey, what's around that next corner? What's that next game that I can open that can give me these stories that I'm telling people, these moments? And so for me, it's Camel Up. I'm going to go kick it to Pete.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. This one, the fun factor, Camel Up all the way. It's just a joy to play. It does bring laughter, laugh out loud moments. I can't believe that happened. It's just a great time. I would play this just about any time if somebody asked me, and I'm going to have a good time doing it. Danielle.
I'm going to ask you at 2 a.m. and see if you want to play it, because you want to play it whenever. All right. Yeah. I mean, hands down, Camel Up. Really nothing more to say from me on this. I think I've beat this camel to death. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Camel Up as well. And as y'all were talking, I was sitting here reflecting also, Downforce, there can become a time when you see if your bets aren't panning out and maybe your car is behind, you're like, okay, I'm out of this and there's not much I can do. To me, if you're behind and you see, okay, I don't have that much money, then all of a sudden it's like, that's when the game gets really fun because you're like, now I got to do some crazy stuff. And I got to play some crazy bets or I got to try to make some things happen. What can I do? And you just start playing super silly. And then sometimes, holy cow, it actually, or I guess holy camel, it actually works out, right? And so that I think is something I hadn't thought about before, where when you're behind, it can actually be even a little more fun as you try to just figure out a way to just make it happen. And if not, you're going to have a great time as you go. So I'm going with Camel Up. Camel Up sweeps the fun factor 4-0. And there you have it, folks. With the score 4-1, Camel Up takes the checkered flag in this battle of the funnest.
Okay, friends. Well, don't fast forward to the bloopers just yet. I want to make a couple of notes for you guys. We are putting this episode out right before Origins Game Fair, and that's in Columbus, Ohio. Chris and David are going to be going to that fair, and Pete might be heading there as well. But if you guys want to link up with them, shoot us an email. Let us know you're going to be there. They're going to be playtesting some games and just getting in on whatever is the action there. You guys can see them around. Chris has these great little Fifth Meeple shirts he has printed up, and he's going to be wearing those. And so get on over there. They just want to sit with you guys and play some games if you guys are there for that. And that just brings us to the end of another episode of the Fifth Meeple. We hope you guys enjoyed our little endeavor. And if you want to get in touch with us, email us at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com or give us a shout out on Facebook or Instagram. And we thank you guys so much for racing with us. And until next time, may your engine always rev at full power. As always, thank you guys for listening. And we hope to see you next time and listening here on the Fifth Meeple. Hello. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna kill you. So so just I don't know what I was saying also. I couldn't read the G's.
Perfect.
Go and go, get, go.
Yeah, and it immediately just started blaming me. Why is it written wrong?
Go, get, go, goo goo gaga gear on. So is it super cup or super sup?
Yeah, we'll just cut that out.
Okay.
How long have you been gone?
Well, I didn't read it. That's my bad. All right, guys. So what about some of the things? Chris, are you done? I'm going to kill you. What?
Someone drag racing.
Oh, yes. Well, that was Downforce. They're leaving us behind.
I actually went out.
Do you like it? Oh, it's fantastic.
I love it. Leave it. Leave it.
Do you guys need a room? Me?
Thinking back to all of our conversations, is it over yet? Can you just finish? Come on, that was a good one. Come on. Chapter Oasis?